You can learn a lot about someone by the songs they listen to, or the hobbies they enjoy, or even the way they decorate their house. Think about how kindergartners make new friends, right? They usually start with, "What's your favorite color?" Mine is yellow, by the way. Jonathan took an interesting approach to sharing his story. He brought a stack of books. Each one represents or depicts a different stage of his own life and development. I loved this idea, and I thought, what a great way to get to know someone on a deeper level. So here's this week's challenge. Ask someone their top 3 songs, or books, or movies. Don't stop at an easy answer either. Find out why so-and-so is their favorite character, which lyric speaks to them the most, at what age they first discovered it. Jonathan says something towards the end of his interview that has stuck with me. When talking about The Great Gatsby, spoiler, sorry, he says that we often look to stories to fulfill us instead of taking something away from them. In other words, we prefer a happy ending to heavier topics that make us think. I think it's the same in our interactions with each other. We can tend to retreat as soon as things get messy. We prefer to keep things light with stories that are tied up with a bow, instead of ones that are unfinished, unpolished, or difficult. I might be so bold as to suggest this has a lot to do with who we choose to listen to, and why we're reverting to social media snippets in place of face-to-face relationship. Stories that have a bow are already finished. That's the point of the bow, and we like that. Completeness, neat and tidy. But if we're going to love our neighbors where they're at right now, today, we're going to have to get used to open ends. You've probably noticed that the stories on this podcast don't necessarily finish with a moral or a happy ending or a solution. The real life part of life isn't confined to the arrival, and stay with me while I quote a Miley Cyrus song, it's the climb. Stories and all their many stages have value. It matters to hear why a certain book means something special to someone. Jonathan reminded me to see the beauty in something as simple as that.
Well, my name is Jonathan Cureton. I have 4 names. My 2 middle names are David and Joseph.
Is that named after anyone in particular? Or
I mean, those are all like people from the Bible.
Okay.
So my dad went to theology school, and he learned like Greek and Hebrew. And as a result, he really has a lot of appreciation for like Hebrew culture.
Yeah.
And in like Hebrew culture, there are no specific names. There are just like words that mean things, and then you would have a word given to you. And so Jonathan means gift from God.
Oh, neat. Okay. What a cool way to look at naming someone. You don't necessarily strike me as being from my generation. You strike me as someone that comes from like 2 generations before.
Okay.
You're kind of the old man before your time. Do you take that in a good way, or is that...
Yes, I think so. I mean, you can't really be anyone but yourself, even if you try to be. So, like, in high school, I kind of tried to be weird because I wanted to be unique.
Yeah.
And then, like,
everybody wants to stand out and have their thing.
But at the end of high school, I was like, I'm just, like, trying to be weird for weirdness' sake instead of, like, actually because I am this way. And so I think, like, at the end of high school, going into college, I really came into my own in a way that I hadn't been before.
Okay, who would you say are some of your primary influences then?
I don't know if I would, like, list influences as to, like, oh yeah, this person, like, completely made me who I am. Because, like, I have inspiration. Like, I see people in the past as, like, inspirations to me, being really inspired by Mr. Rogers to just, like, be good for just the sake of helping others and because that's the right thing to do. More lately, I have realized that, like, I can be really intentional about these little things to really influence, like, how people perceive me and, like, how I affect others. Because I think that a lot of people don't recognize, like, how much effect they can have on those around them.
I agree.
Even if it's just like really little things. But if you become very intentional about like creating an image that is very like comforting and kind, that can really help people, even in like very small ways. I mean, sometimes I feel like I can't necessarily show that sometimes I do like struggle with things.
Yeah.
And that can be a little bit hard sometimes. But there are always like a few friends who see you as like more than just one thing. Mm-hmm. And so, I think I really try to like take comfort in those people, because everybody needs somebody else to lean on.
What would you say to the person who maybe has you specifically pegged as that one image?
Well, I think I would say, Mr. Rogers was like a huge inspiration, but he had like an enormous amount of self-doubt. An incredible amount of self-doubt. Like, I think that it is what makes him human that actually
of course.
Is truly inspiring. Because that means that any of us could strive to do that and could eventually achieve like something as impactful as what he did.
I wanted to ask you about homeschooling. What were the positive influences out of that? What were the negative influences? Did you love it? Did you hate it?
Well, I think that homeschooling showed me that I could be my own person without having to really care like about this other environment of a lot of people like constantly judging me. Like, it's not as though you don't have any social interaction. It's just like there's less stigma behind those interactions, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really enjoyed homeschooling because I got to like try a lot of things. Like, I got to try sports and theater and band. Like, I used to do a lot of rock collecting because I like middle school up to high school.
Yeah. Do you still have your collection?
I do have some rock collections, and I really I have an appreciation for rocks and minerals and like for how diverse. When I was in middle school, I really wanted to be a geologist.
Really?
Yes. I don't know, now like knowing a lot of geologists, I don't think that I would really want to be a geologist. I don't really do that anymore. And I think that's okay, because like I had my time with it, and it was fun.
You have some unique hobbies.
I do have some unique hobbies.
Name the top most bizarre hobbies that you have developed.
Well, I like cosplay because I think it's really fun to like dress up as another character, kind of like theater, but it's like a little bit less pressure because you don't have like lines to memorize. Yes. So, but that goes to another one of my hobbies, which is chainmail. And I got this job like in high school. I had been to, art museums where I had seen like that medieval armor, and it looked so cool.
Yeah.
And like,
it's kind of mesmerizing.
It really is. That spell was definitely cast.
So you got the job.
I did. I worked that job for a couple of years.
It seems like something that would be incredibly time consuming.
It is, but for me, I find really repetitive motion kind of meditative.
Yeah.
I mean, it did get like monotonous.
Okay.
But in general, I do find that really enjoyable.
Yeah.
So
you wanted to study rocks, and then you went and worked making chainmail. Yeah. For a couple years.
Yes.
And now you're at an engineering school. How did you get here?
I was in both a geometry course and an art history course at the same time. And I really like art, but I recognized that I wasn't that great at like painting. And I enjoyed both of those things. And so I thought, maybe I would really like to do architectural design. My ideas about architecture have changed a little bit. because I also got really interested in urban planning. The driving factor behind my will to continue with architecture is that I want to make spaces that are just like nice for people to exist in.
Yeah.
And I ended that sentence with a preposition, but I think everybody understands.
Yes. But grad school is the plan.
Grad school is the plan, and so, I have some more schooling in front of me.
Well, stepping into S&T, which I would imagine as an engineering school carries a lot of pressure and a lot of weight, even just simply in the field of study that you've chosen. So how has that transition been?
I mean, I think that the growth has been good. When I first started at S&T, they expect a lot out of you at the very beginning. Yeah. And there was this weed out class that I was taking, which was not fun, and it was Chemistry 1. And if you are like not really into chemistry, that can be a really difficult...
That can make you cry.
Yeah, it can make well, it did make me cry.
Yes.
So that can be a really difficult class, and like right before the first test, I decided, people like talk about college like it's a really enjoyable experience, and I'm feeling none of that. And so because that class was giving me so much trouble and I wasn't really understanding the concepts, I decided to just drop it and try to do like enjoyable things in college, like get some of the more like interpersonal side of things. And so I ended up dropping chemistry, and as a result of this class called freshman engineering, in which you're supposed to like kind of go around and experience different departments, they like try to expose you to a lot of like all the fields of study that you could do. So I like went to this professional society for architectural engineers called AEI, the Architectural Engineering Institute, and I really enjoyed some of the speakers they had. So I kind of got involved with them my first semester here.
Okay.
And I ended up going out down near Licking to this farm on the Piney River, and we did some surveying. And so we took pictures of this like Civil War era farm that had the largest log barn in the state. Yeah, it was really cool.
That's really cool.
So we like wrote up reports on the different buildings and like took measurements of all the buildings and what state of repair they were in. Then submitted it, and they are now going to turn it into like a living history.
No way.
Place. So yeah. Although I do sometimes like think about what if I had chosen to do something else? Would that still be viable? And would I like be the same person I am right now if I had decided to do something else?
If you could do anything else, what would that be?
That's a funny question, because I mean, as I said, I've thought about that a lot. And as a result, I have like very sincerely and very seriously looked at other paths.
Yeah.
And so, let's see, the first one that I thought about was going to culinary school. This was about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so I have always really liked cooking. And also I was like halfway through my engineering degree. And so I thought, at this point, like why stop with architectural engineering? Partially because my parents have like spent so much money putting me through school, and also because like I feel too invested in it right now to totally give it up.
What are some of the other things you considered?
The second one, I mean, I guess I kind of have to start with a story, which was when when I was a freshman in college, while I was going to S&T, my brother was taking this class because he's an English major, and it was on death and dying. And so, which is like just kind of a weird subject. Yeah. During this course, he his teacher told him about this movie that she had seen called Departures, which is about a man who is playing the cello in an orchestra in Japan.
Okay.
And as a result of like the orchestra not doing as well, the sponsor for the orchestra has to cut sponsorship and dissolve the orchestra. And he's looking for a job, and he sees this job description that says that he will be working with Departures. And so he goes to the address, and it ends up being a funeral home. And it was a misprint, and it was supposed to say, you will be working with the departed. And so even though at first he really doesn't like it, he learns to find like beauty in caring for people.
Uh-huh.
And as a result, I recognized that could be a really fulfilling thing to do. And so I got really interested in potentially being a mortician, which is a weird job title.
Yeah.
But I have since decided not to do that, just because like that would also be a very nerve-wracking job. So, and as a result, I started following this author named Caitlin Doty, and she's a funeral director who lives in LA and runs a like alternative burial funeral home. And so they do like a lot of like natural burials, and like they just try to offer like more ecologically friendly options, and also make the family more involved in the process. So, but I brought some other things. I don't think I've ever told you about this, but I'm also a member of a school of tea ceremony, a school of Japanese tea ceremony.
How did you get into that? What's that backstory?
Well, my brother was at a convention up in St. Louis, and it was for like pop culture-y stuff and also like Japanese anime. But there was this one person there, her name is Alex, and she wanted to get people like actually interested in Japanese culture instead of just like what's popular. And so she arranged to have like a tea ceremony demonstration there. And he saw that ceremony and like how beautiful it was, and decided that he wanted to do that too. And so now we both have like the same teacher and go to her tea room in her house in St. Charles.
Where do you find these things?
I mean, I don't know. I think, you know, if you're just like vibrating at that slightly different frequency of the universe, then you end up, you know, finding other people who are vibrating at that slightly different frequency of the universe. I did bring some other books. I just decided to like bring some books
representative of...
that were like,
I think that's perfect.
Very influential to me.
Yes.
So this is The Silmarillion, 1977, which was when the first edition was published. My favorite book.
Wow.
And I read it while I was in high school, which was like, I feel as though when I was in high school was like a time in which I was kind of coming into my own. And so, like, of course, a lot of people know The Lord of the Rings, and like things in The Lord of the Rings come off as kind of idealized a lot of times, I feel like. But The Silmarillion is more in depth, and it shows you that like things are a little more complicated in this world. I don't know, at the same time, like I was kind of approaching that about the actual world. Like the real world is kind of more complicated. Okay, so this is Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli, which is about a homeschooler in a world full of public schoolers.
Oh my goodness.
Stargirl, as she calls herself, she decides to give herself the name Stargirl and make everyone call her Stargirl because, you know, you go through different stages of life, and at different times you feel like you should be called different things. And so during this book, she calls herself Stargirl, and she tries to be like the most authentic, great person ever. And so she like appreciates dancing in the rain and just like
all
wearing
of the good things.
Yeah, just like wearing whatever she wants. And like she has memorized the birthday of every single person in the school that she starts going to. And she gets out her ukulele and sings them happy birthday on their birthday. And like, I think that even though other people like didn't perceive that as good, she was the one who was really right because she cared. And like, she cried alongside those who were grieving. And she was celebrating alongside those who were happy. And even when people didn't really understand why she did that, I think it was good. At the end of the book, it's kind of heartbreaking because like people are very judgmental towards her.
When did you read that one?
I was in high school as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was that really timely for just where you were at that time
Yeah, I
too?
think so.
And
I think so.
you mentioned that you went through this phase of like just trying to be weird, like for the sake of being weird. Give me a little snapshot into just that time and trying to navigate all that and some of the highs and lows of walking through that time.
That's a really tough question. But I don't know. Like, I kind of felt like a little bit of a black sheep in high school just because I was trying to figure out who I was and that wasn't who everybody else was. I think that I tried to be likable, which backfired. I've like processed it myself, but I'm not sure that I can totally put it into words. Yeah.
Okay, The Great Gatsby.
Okay, I do have The Great Gatsby, which I brought mostly because being in the homeschool community, especially because we were like part of the more conservative Christian homeschool community, people viewed stories like that in a very negative light. Yeah, because they were about people who had these like really raucous, totally carefree lives. I found a lot of value in The Great Gatsby because it was like showed you what you should not be. I think that in our culture we don't really put enough value in like understanding stories about people who don't really have very meaningful lives because we want to like feel fulfilled by stories instead of take something away from them. So, and then I have The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Okay.
Which I brought this because even besides like all the cool military strategy, there is one part at the beginning that I really like, and it's when Sun Tzu gives the reader a warning that war is not a way of goodness and is not the way of a gentleman. To pick up weapons and fight is not necessarily good. And so he says to go to war for personal gain is like the greatest dishonor of all. To do things that could end up being divisive solely for personal gain is not a good decision. Like that might get you places financially, but that won't be a very meaningful way to live. So, and then of course, I have the Bible here, and I wanted to read a couple of my favorite verses. My very favorite verse is from Ecclesiastes, and it's at the very end. Solomon says, "Now, the end of the matter. All has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil." Like there are consequences for your actions, even if nobody else sees them, or even if other people might approve or disapprove of good or evil.
Aren't you fascinated by Jonathan's unique hobbies? After our conversation, he walked me through the steps and history of tea ceremony. I'll be posting the process with pictures and resources on the blog later this week, so be sure and check that out. As a bonus for our Patreon community, we'll be sharing a video featuring footage from an actual tea ceremony at the tea room Jonathan attends. His sensei was kind enough to share this with us to spread the appreciation of tea. If you'd like to receive that video and other exclusive monthly bonuses, head to our Patreon and join the community. I'll link it in the show notes below. Your support as a patron enables us to gather and share more stories. Music for the show is by Nathan Hall and artwork by Ashley Crutcher and Jenny Brewster. There's not a more fitting way to close Jonathan's episode than with a Mr. Rogers quote. When we love a person, we accept him or her exactly as is. The lovely with the unlovely. The strong along with the fearful. The true mixed in with the facade, and of course, the only way we can do it is by accepting ourselves that way. Thanks for listening to You Never Asked.